Welcome back to my kitchen. Today I am cooking dinner and I'm gonna make a fettuccine alfredo with mushrooms, or mushroom fettuccine alfredo, however you want to call that. Basically we're going to make an alfredo sauce from cashews, and we're gonna cook down some mushrooms with some garlic and some olive oil and these onions here, and we're gonna make a delicious pasta dish here. I'm gonna start just by peeling and dicing these onions. You can use any kind of onion you want. If you want to use red onion, you can use red onion. I'm using white onion for this recipe. I think it just yields a better flavor in the end. But same goes for the mushrooms. You can use I'm gonna use some baby bellas that I have left over from my my smothered and covered hash browns. So if you haven't seen that video, click up here on the right and you can watch that. But yeah, I'm just using some baby bella mushrooms. I like them quite a bit. Like I said, any mushrooms here is fine. You're just gonna need probably about 8 to 12 ounces of mushrooms, and you can go more or less depending on how you feel about mushrooms. We like mushrooms here in this house, so I'm going with about 12 ounces or so of mushrooms. And you just want to get a relatively fine dice on this onion, but it doesn't have to be perfect, like I say all the time. Alright, let's get our pan heating up here. Should have already had it heating, but that's okay. I'm just going to heat that on about a medium low, a little bit below a medium. Basically I'm gonna take this garlic here and I'm gonna microplane it in, and we are going to cook down the onions and the garlic in some olive oil as the base for this recipe. Just a couple tablespoons of oil there, or maybe a couple, maybe like 2 to 3 teaspoons, maybe 1 tablespoon. And as always, I'll have the full written recipe down below in the description. I'm gonna go ahead and go in with the onions. And probably should have let that pan heat up a little more, but it'll be fine. Because we definitely don't want to burn the garlic here. So I'm going to use a microplane for the garlic, and I leave the little nub on the end so that I know where to stop. But basically, just hold your microplane over, try not to burn yourself, and just grade that that garlic into the pan. You don't have to have a microplane. I don't think technically what I'm using here is a microplane. I refer to it as a microplane. This is probably more like a zester. Microplane I think is maybe even smaller grates, but any kind of very small zest or grate will work. And we want to leave, we're using about 4 cloves of garlic here. We want to leave the garlic cloves pretty whole, so that we can grate them like this. If you smash them up too much, they'll be hard to kind of grate. And of course, you don't have to use this method. You could use a garlic press or just do a nice chopped mince. But this method I think is quicker, more effective in terms of the size of the garlic that you get, and just a whole lot easier than chopping or whatever. So we're just going to sweat this garlic and onion down, and like I said, just below a medium heat or so is perfectly fine. Get that stuff out here. Oh man, it smells so good. I love the smell of onions and garlic. I've got a pot of water over here. I brought it up to almost a boil and then dropped it down. I'm just keeping it ready for when I want to cook my pasta. I'm using this linguine bronze cut pasta. This is a signature series from Safeway. It's the bronze cut pasta usually looks different from regular pasta. It's got, I'll bring it over here in the light. It's got some ridges And that's all of those ridges on that pasta noodle there is just starch. And it has to do with the way that they push the pasta through the dies. I think the bronze pasta dies tend to leave a little bit of surface area on your pasta, and then that translates to more starch, and more starch released in the pasta water. And when you go to thicken your sauce with your pasta water at the end, it'll be really thick. Just gonna do a little bit of salt in there with that, and we're just gonna leave that. I'm dropping it down to a low right now because we're gonna come over here and make our cashew sauce. All we're doing for this recipe is adding in a cup of cashews and 2 cups of water to a high-powered blender. You don't need to soak these cashews. If you don't have a high-powered blender, I would recommend that you soak these in hot water. I've got too many things plugged in. But we're gonna start down on the lowest setting, and get our lid on here and just blend until completely smooth.
And slowly up the dial.
That's about good there. We're gonna go ahead and slice our mushrooms that we're gonna add, and those are gonna go in next. And before I started this video, my camera was running a little low on battery, so I went ahead and prepped these mushrooms. I just took the stem out and threw it in my compost there. I don't usually wash my mushrooms just because I don't really see much of a point in it. I've heard some things about washing them, like if you wash them, you'll introduce more moisture, and then when you go to cook them, they'll let off a lot more moisture than intended. I don't know, people go back and forth on stuff like that all the time. I think it tends to not really make a massive difference, and it's kind of just an extra step that I don't really ever feel like doing, so I just don't do it. But by all means, take a little damp towel and wash your mushrooms if you want to. Like I said, you can use any mushrooms in this. I'm using baby bellas, but some shiitakes would be nice, or oyster mushrooms, anything really. Whatever your favorite mushroom is. Because the mushroom's going to be kind of the only vegetable that you're going to be able to tell is in this, other than onion, obviously, but it's going to be a mushroom Alfredo, so definitely want to pick a mushroom that you're keen on. And we're gonna add some parsley there at the end. The other thing I did with that parsley while the camera was off, I just pulled the leaves and discarded the stems into the compost bin here. So we're not gonna use the stems for this recipe. A lot of recipes, if you're able to just keep the stem, you can usually just chop it up pretty fine and cook it down, and it adds some nice flavor, but I'm not gonna do that for this recipe. We're just gonna add some chopped parsley in at the end for some additional herby flavor. It goes really nicely with the mushrooms. Okay, so these mushrooms are all chopped down, and just gonna bring the pan over here. It's pretty much it's not really doing a whole lot in the pan. We've got that cooked down where we need it. And we'll crank the heat back up, and we'll cook these mushrooms down now. Just incorporate everything really nicely. Alright, so our water's boiling over here, so we're going to cook the, I'm going to salt the water here pretty heavily, and we'll cook this pasta according to the instructions, which is 9 to 10 minutes. So hopefully by the time the pasta's done, we'll be pretty close with our sauce. And I'm gonna go ahead and do the whole thing. And you just want to work that down. I'm not going to lecture you on how to cook pasta because I think most people probably already know how to do that, but I just like to work mine around, let that bottom half get nice and hot before I start pushing it down. Just don't burn yourself. And while that's softening, I'm just gonna give this a good stir. We want to remember that this garlic is in here, so we still don't want to burn the garlic. So right around a medium heat. And we just want to cook these mushrooms down. They'll start to release moisture, and that moisture will cook off. And then we'll get a nice consistency on our mushrooms. Alright, we've got our mushrooms in sauteing. We've got our pasta in here that's getting ready. I'm just going to go ahead and jump forward now to when the pasta is starting to cook down and the mushrooms are cooked down a little bit. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes now, and I'm going to go ahead and pour in our blended cashews and water. So we got those mushrooms cooked down pretty well, and just the cashews blended going in here. And we want to crank the heat up on this a bit, just above medium, and start to cook it down. We want it to come to like a light simmer, and then we're going to add some more stuff to it. But you should definitely be smelling the mushrooms, the onion, the garlic, and now this essentially cashew milk is going to act as a nice thickener and be the liquid base for our sauce. See, our pasta here is coming along nicely. While that's going, I'm going to chop up some of this parsley that we're going to add at the end. And this is just flat leaf parsley. You can use the curly parsley if you want. And this is completely optional, but I think it adds a nice flavor at the end. And you can go as rough or as finely chopped as you want. I think I'm gonna go for a bit more of a fine chop. There we go. Just a little bit more here. Alright, perfect. So we're not going to add that in just yet, but now that we've got it ready, we won't have to worry about it later. Alright. Okay, so now this has come up to a simmer here. And some of it's kind of trying to cook a little bit. You just want to make sure that you're stirring it. And don't let the cashew milk like cook up at all. But you can see it's already starting to thicken up quite nicely here. So we're gonna go ahead and add about 1/4 to 1/8 teaspoon or so of salt, maybe slightly more, and about 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. And I'm gonna drop this down a little bit because it's starting to bubble and kind of spit. And the last thing we want to add is about 4 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. And if you've not had nutritional yeast before, a lot of people refer to it as nooch. It is a yeast that is high in B12, and B12 is the only vitamin that you don't get from eating like vegetables and stuff. So on a vegan diet, oftentimes people will take a B12 supplement, but if you don't want to take a supplement, just eat a lot of nutritional yeast and you can sort of meet your B12 requirement. It's really, really good ingredient because it adds kind of a cheesy flavor to everything. We eat it on popcorn a lot, and I use it in a lot of different dishes. Use it in a lot of sauces. Of course, this sauce right here, and you can see just how nice this sauce is cooking into. It's just thickened completely up now, and it's so thick that I'm going to drop it down just a little bit and use something else to check on my pasta. Use the actual pasta arm thing. Almost there. Just a couple more minutes. Alright. This looks really nice. So thick and so creamy. I'll bring it over here and show you in the light. It's a very, very rich, creamy sauce. Got our mushrooms poking through there. Okay, so that's finishing cooking up. We're gonna add about 2 tablespoons of butter to the sauce. And this as well is completely optional. You do not need to add butter. As you can tell, it's already a really thick sauce, but just to add some richness to it and some more creaminess, I'm gonna just kind of work in this 2 tablespoons of butter as the pasta is finishing cooking. And like in my my 15-minute restaurant quality pasta video that I made a while back, we're gonna tong the pasta straight into the sauce here, and even use a bit of the pasta water to help bring everything together. Get that butter worked in real nice. Okay. All right. We are so close. Okay, so the pasta is done. I'm gonna bring it close to the sauce, and we're gonna pick straight up, and without draining it, we're just gonna dump the pasta straight into the sauce. Okay, so my camera died on me as I was finishing this recipe, but it's a really quick end to the recipe here. We poured all of that pasta in here, and we're just gonna start to mix it through. And I'm even gonna grab a little bit of the pasta water. We're gonna go about half a cup of pasta water straight in. And we just wanna mix that with the pasta and bring all of it together really nicely. Get it all mixed throughout. Okay, I'm gonna finish it off with a bit of pepper, the parsley that we chopped earlier. And then one last fold through. Alright, so here's the final dish, the Mushroom Fettuccine Alfredo. Finished it off with a little black pepper and some parsley and a few of those nicely sauteed mushrooms on top. And we're going to give it a little try here. It's so thick. Look at how thick it is. Wow. Alright, don't video me. Oh my god. Wow. It's incredible. It's so creamy and so rich. Oh, and the mushrooms are so meaty. It's delicious. Should definitely give this a try. And sorry about my camera dying, but hopefully this will suffice as an ending here. So thanks for watching, and leave me a thumbs up down below, and consider subscribing if you want to see daily vegan content. And I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.